중등된 공본자 호라양 라샹자로 근거로 주름니 점자녀다 남다라서 진예 동거 저저저 니지다가 라원자 간다 지베서 마르무제 딩마라 제자 로조 갈라바제 다제 야라 제야다 드드라제 도뇨모뇨로 레제 저도 좀자 마르무제 딩마라냐가 전예 점자라다 돈네 다자 자지 다조 요다 제조 제제도 저자 저다 제니 제제도 마즈라 자와라 요란다다 오마라 바자나도 오마라 바자나도 오마라 바자나도 오마라 바자나도 오마라 바자 Umara bazana domara 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 bazana Umara bazana de zedra jiji jero ozeraji dalo dama mambaraza guadang damju jolo dobai Lodu be nava jeda so nyaji jembo zodu nyume jan zone mulum jembo ngajat bakar dangam zandu shema do domba de je jala janza lo oh ya teni namba tamche pola joba de l'âge.
Good morning, everyone.
Teni teranga ngajo ngaso chutu gongon chutu gongola teni namba tamji bo shangchim shok the sem ki gore.
So we are going to begin with this morning's teaching now, and before we do so, everybody please make an aspiration of bodhicitta.
Teni shangchim ko sem zya teni kaunti zila ze ngaso kharsang teni konda Shatsarson, the Natarong Tsama, the Ningatsu Lojongshi, Gum, the Suhali Bakar Chimbore.
So we explained about what we mean by bodhicitta yesterday, and in respect of our practice, our meditation, the motivation of bodhicitta is extremely important.
Oh, yeah, the Niterangatsu, Ta Journey, the Gum Yamsen, the Shakri.
So this morning we are going to be teaching on Shamatha meditation.
Oh, yeah, the Karsangatsu Shirdanga, the two some gum, the so shil shani, that there two batang, some batang, gumba, and the gumba, the shabikabres.
So yesterday we talked about the threefold formula of studying or listening to the Buddha's teachings, contemplating them, and then putting them into practice through meditation. So of these three, listening, contemplating, and meditating, today we are going to be addressing the third.
Jigda nyangji tani tab dang sherbu zeni tindi zegre tab zigida nyangji tani sherbu tab sherbu ni jamba tani donda ni je jamba kakayo mare.
So in terms of the teachings of the Buddha, the main thing that we are in pursuit of, that we are aiming for, is really just two: wisdom and compassion, sometimes referred to as wisdom and means. This also refers to wisdom and compassion. These are the two things that we strive to achieve in our Buddhist practice.
Tani tabdanyarji te nika gangni yonggo rezina susu gumni yonggo re ma tok batele jamba nga to gurmo cherni tabdang shirab nyojin me tenra baz ke tabdang shirab janla teni chokjin me kejin me tabshi jamba jiji yo mare sosorang go gum go re.
And in terms of manifesting these two things or bringing about them wisdom and compassion, there is no other means for doing this than through our meditation practice. This is the primary way that we go about manifesting these qualities.
Tani gom gone yakboz nyamlimshi tabna tani nyamlimshi pi tabte yakboz shina tani soso rang gom nyamlim chongzu shina de soso da kashi lana pe haliba yakbo yong re yang kashi na tenri yakbo mayo na da shertang ge yonden mangbo top de ngone jang ge top ge re gom de nyamlimshi na.
So if we are familiar with meditation practice, and particularly the method of meditation practice, then it is possible for us to manifest these things. It's possible. Some people will be able to manifest them rather well, and maybe others not so well. But in any case, through our understanding of meditation practice, it is possible for us to manifest many qualities.
Tani gum japi ne kumna thomer nga chu gum japsa ga sacha de la tani samlo tang go re sacha de tani yakboz de rag go re gum japsa de.
So in terms of our meditation practice, the first thing to take into account is the place that we are meditating in.
Tani gum japsa ga sacha de pe na dinding khamba diri chimbo na la nga chu mambo nyam de tani gum jap na ya chok re 양나 되니 다 라니 찍보에나 되니 찍보 되니 칸바 나라 되니 모잠바 메사 되니 티나라는 샤와잠바 되니 어다 침본다 되니 메사 되니 미 망보 메사 탑디보 되니 잠보 되니 지나 되니 사차 강라이나 티나라 곰잠나 초코레.
It's okay, it's fine if we meditate in a situation like today, in a big hall with many others around. This is one possibility. The other is to meditate alone in a place without too much noise, a quiet place without anyone else around. This is also another choice for our meditation practice.
Tani 곰잡사 사차텔라 다 잠바 차킨 잠바 강이나 차버 침보요 말이야. 조조도 자망보 메파틴 디즈 고데 당부 티니 곰잡이네 금나 teni jate halipa ngakin chimbore shetanga cho jala teni gomjapti teni yonjeta inna yang tambu kaps teni gomjapti teni jamang boyo moyo teni langkhor mamboyo teni inna teni ti parchi chimbo zore sem teni yapo dethap ko mare te indi jamang bo me pate so tambo dam go re.
So in terms of the conditions that need to be in place for a particular location to be suitable for meditation practice, the main thing is really to choose a place that is not noisy. There aren't too many disturbing sounds. And this is important, particularly in the beginning of our meditation practice, because sounds in our immediate environment, people, cars, etc., create disturbance for us and make it difficult for us to bring our minds into calmness, and are therefore an obstacle to our practice. So the most important thing to bear in mind is to find a quiet place to practice.
tani gum japsati nala thamur tini ngaso gum gdini samtang tanze wa tini te japte sormo ji yar tini thoyong kan tini ngan tini sormo ji mara mayong kan tini ge tan o tini ge tola dggo gore tela tan tela tini samtang tanze ge te karte mena so sorang shina chokore japte tun thombo ngan te zamamo tini zina te chama jukre.
And then we need to find for ourselves a meditation mat. This could be a mat 4 finger breadths in width with a slightly higher back and a slightly lower front. So we need to acquire for ourselves a suitable meditation mat.
Tani sachati tani tabdukshi tsari jini tani gomjapjire tani gomjapine kamna tambo ngaso 다 소소랑가 디소 땅깁시 고레 디소 찌글라 곰나 야나 치소 니라 곰나 덴디즈라 데 치소 강라 곰나 데 잡둑시 데 입시 차위 지니 데니 상로 땅데 데니 다 나랑가 레카레 고야 치소 니가 나라 베나 카버 잡고나자 데 Pemai Bileka Gang, Legona Tsama Tamboni Le, go Remato Batini, so Gum Javuti, Tini, young Yarandro, young Marandro, Tendishina, then Jugumari, Gum Japi Caps, then Chizo Ni Nari, Chizo Shekayana, Chizo Shina, Tinala, then in Juma Zokobarda, Yandro Mandrushina, then Jugumari.
So, having made these preparations, the next thing to do is to decide how long our meditation session will be, 1 hour or 2 hours, or however long we decide. It's important, having decided how long we intend to meditate, to make sure that whatever tasks we need to complete are already completed, that our phones are turned off, that whatever we need to do, we've already done, so that after we actually sit down to meditation, we're not interrupted, we don't have to get up and get down again. It's whether we are meditating for a period of half an hour or 1 hour or 2 hours, it's important that we continuously continue with our meditation throughout the session without interruption.
Tani perna nga zo kambaz kanala gom jamna, tani kamba gote shena gana tamboni she, jamna gana tamboni jab. Tani go tani karkung soye na shena gana susu tamboni gom magib koni she. Tani par jamna gana tani gom magib koni tani jab gogore mato ba tambo karkung magib. Tani yang gom jab yote o ta nga yarna ni karkung jab manduk, gur jab manduk samni tani shena tani njaka marezi te so tsama tambo ni tani trabduk yakbozu she gogores.
And again, before we actually sit down to our meditation session, it's important that if we prefer the door open, that we open it. If we prefer it closed, we close it. And the same with the windows too. If we like them open, we should open them and close them if we prefer them that way. If we sit down to our meditation practice and then think, oh, I'd prefer the window open, and then get up and open it, then this is not the proper way to practice.
Tani chaparta tani tarta muzla samlo tambayna kaparka go yana kaparka go jab go gore yana jami pashine sacha jambazala jag go gore matom makashiga gum jabne kaparti hunla jagne tinalam chuntong automaton tajur shi tani tinala te kapar automaton tajur shi ne tani gum jam kanyor tani zina gum yakpo chawane yo mare te kapar yana go jab go gore karte go japatini tammadina tani jami pashine sacha jambazala jag go gore maatopa gum japine kubla tani chuntong la tajeta kapar la tajeta chawane ru mare.
And then the next important thing is, particularly for people these days, is to make sure that our mobile phones are either turned off or that the sound is turned off. There are, and if we decide to turn the sound off, then just the sound off, but keep the phones on, then we should put them someplace a little distance from us. There are some people who sit down to meditation with their phones on and find themselves checking to see if they've got text messages or phone calls, and this is not an appropriate way to meditate at all. So it's important that the phone be turned off, otherwise the sound turned down and the phone put elsewhere.
Teni zhnyum ta so teni jangmo shi go na zhombo shi go na tambo ni te yakboz teni jigni jak go re ma to ba yang chakche yo yang zhoche yo te ina yang gomla parche rin ro res zhnyum.
And the other thing to pay attention to is the heating, to make sure that we have the heating set at an appropriate temperature before we sit down to meditate, a temperature that's not too hot or not too cold, and so that we can begin our meditation not disturbed by issues of temperature.
Tam dorna chiri sha go mare dorna chiso chipo tinala gom jamna chiso chipo tinala le goya go shawa chama tambo ni le go res.
So it's not necessary to go through each item one by one. The main thing is that whatever we need to see to before we begin our meditation, we ensure that we've done this so that we can sit down without interference.
Tani gum jab chit tambo trabdik shi pine kumne sem lopo shi ne tani gum jab chit trabdik shi go re ma so ba tani tambo gum jab chit trabdik kap sem nang la nam tok mambo che sem subcha mambo che tani trera mambo shi tani shi ne gum jab na yang te shi kin them ro re tambo ne gum majib gum jab chit trabdik shi pine kumne chongze sem lopo shi to mo ta goes.
And when we're making preparations for our meditation session, it's good if we do so with a relaxed mind. If we find our minds full of all kinds of thoughts, feeling rushed or hurried during our meditation preparations, then it's possible that this will unfavorably influence our meditation during our formal session. So while we're doing our preparations, it's good to do so with a relaxed state of mind.
아야 되니 대소 참마 시설이 진이 되니 다 땅가 토란 등니 되니 다 곰잡 좀 고츠고 그래.
So after all of these things have been seen to, then we sit down on our mat and our meditation session begins.
되니 곰잡지 때랑 아서 되니 곰 직잡나 때라 되니 고름 스므레 되니 땅보대 곰지 혼조당 되니 곰지 우즈당 되니 곰지 임직리 다양나 되니 곰지 고당 곰지 파르당 곰지 임직리 되니 그더니 디숫 그더니 름바 스며레.
So in terms of a meditation session, there are 3 stages: the beginning stage or the preparation stage, the preliminary stage, the middle or core stage, and then the conclusion stage.
되니 곰고 혼조 티나라 되니 도나시고사 스며지.
And during the first stage, the preparation stage or the preliminary stage, there are essentially 3 things that we need to pay attention to.
되니 땅보디 되니 리츠크데 야보즈 고거리 되니 리츠크데 되니 리츠크 남낭 추든제니 곰잡이네 금낭아서 리츠크 야보즈 그 곰잡 고거레 마토바 되니 지 연jer 되니 냐니 곰잡 틴디시나 되니 땅부 값스 되니 곰약 보용 거 말이지 곰약 보용 차비 지니 컨디시나 초코레 마토바 땅부니 금나 땅아서 리포데 약보시니 되니 데나 되니 곰 셈나라 곰약 보용알라 판토요레 되니 리포고 츠 리츠크
So the first thing we need to pay attention to is our body posture. And here we are referring to ensuring that we are sitting in the 7-point posture of Virachana. Particularly at the beginning of our practice, it's useful for us to do this, to make sure that we're not sitting in a way, leaning left or right or back and forth. After we've become experienced in meditation practice, then we might make changes to the way we sit during meditation. But to begin with, in particular, it is of benefit to our practice if we pay strict attention to our bodily posture.
리스크 나라 담보 강바니까 제종시 고레 되니 강바 나판자 되니 담디반자 되니 마이나 셔당라 되니 제종자고 레지트니 양 제종지나 되니 담마디바 되니 지 강바 나판자 오다 양나 주진장가 되니 데 제종시야 자만이 담마디나 되니 다 컨디시나 초코레 ngaso디 니 득처가 돌아 급다가 돌란드나 되니 초코레 마도 셔당
So the first point here is to sit in a cross-legged position. For those who have problems with their legs or for whom it is otherwise inconvenient to sit in this posture, then you can choose to sit in another position. However, for those of us who are able to do so, then the first point is to sit in a cross-legged position.
되니 니바드 락바니카가 되니 냠작 샤자제 그래 냠작 샤자제나 탐치 근달라타 델라투세 네 락발라툰드리시 고레스.
And then the next point is to place our hands in the meditation mudra.
와야 락바 용바 잡라 자고레 되니 락바 예파 톡라 자고레 되니 대목니까 들이 토트 고레.
So with our left hand underneath and our right hand placed above it, we bring our 2 thumbs together, and this is how we make the mudra.
되니 딘디시 사비지니 되니 때와 올라서 모전 삼란들인 쪽고레.
And then we bring our mudra, our hands in the mudra to the place 4 finger breadths below our navel.
되니 양나 되니 가서 가시가 나라 되니 느리시니 락바니까 느리시니 비무고 돌란들이 장나요 초코레스.
Some people like to rest their hands on their two knees like this, and this is also okay.
되니 대 금전 홍천람 좀 거더니 조바 침보 semnyang arso ta tiso nangla 되니 송요리 되니 빙무 토라잖아 안 그래.
So Lungchen Ranjampa said in his kindly bent to ease us, or what simkiness wasn't it?
semnyang arso
Yes. Resting mind or ease or kindly bent to ease us, that it is fine to place our hands on our knees in this way.
되니 실당 망치슈디 가선든디 시그래 망치슈디.
However, most of the time we keep our hands, rest our hands in the meditation mudra like this.
대니 바드레지 되니 선바드 대 뽕바 판스니까 너디 양닌들이 저거 너디 시난 저 말이 너디 시면년지 너디 바 양고 그래.
And the third point is to bring our shoulders slightly forward. It's not okay if we hunch our shoulders backwards.
대섬리 되니 지바드 되니 리포 장보 시고래 되니 장보 예라 되니 척저 윤란 척저 되니 예라 윤 되니 많이 바 장보 시고래 인나 실흔님들이 할리바가 장보 되니 시나요 그 말에.
And the next point is to sit in an upright position. So that is a position where we're not leaning to the left or to the right. In sitting in an upright position, though, we shouldn't do this in an overly forced way. It should be a relaxed upright position.
되니 나바도 응고인들이 늘라 종습 거고진들이 할리반들이 그러잖아 뭔득지대 고 종습들이 거고래.
And the fifth point is to bring our chin slightly forward, not too much, not right to our chest, but slightly forward.
되니 때 르나레지 되니 즉바데 되니 아주 무그 되니 마르타고레 무그 ndonshoko 되니 나르실라 타송오레디 나가지 몬데라 타고 마레지 티쇼라 마르티 와르나 똥바데라 타고레 마르타고레지 셔당라 텐디레지.
And then the sixth point is to lower our gaze forward to the space beyond the tip of our nose.
되니 양 값값은 아주 곰잡이네 겁나 되니 탕칼라타고야나 되니 값요레디 값스 되니 무그 마르타고 마레 파르탕칼라타나 초코레.
Sometimes during our meditation session, it's necessary for us to look at a tanka in front of us, and in this situation we can raise our gaze, but otherwise we keep it lowered at this towards the space below the tips of our noses.
되니 가서 양 먹하시듯 되니 더 곰잡이네 겁나 니데 먹쯤네 되니 곰잡 큰 되니 망분득세 샤르속라이나 먹쯤나 데 염성 강르지나 먹시나 되니 우부 망분 통용 거래 우부 망분 통나 셈능라 남톡 망보 지용 거 삼네 되니 먹쯤네 되니 곰잡나 종스 셈가나라 남톡 되서 용용라고 로운도 디김슨지 되니 먹쯤네 되니 곰잡 큰 두세.
There are a lot of people who close their eyes when they meditate. Particularly in the East, there are a lot of people who do this. And the reason is because when we have our eyes open, our eyes perceive many things, and it's felt that then many thoughts arise as a result. And so it is felt that closing the eyes enables these, in therefore not being able to see things, makes these thoughts a bit fewer.
되니 먹점니 곰잡냥 그 말이 되니 먹점니 곰잡나 되니 karma 지니 되니 년로래.
However, this isn't good to do for the reason that after a couple of minutes we will find ourselves falling asleep.
되니 맨나 닉점적나 셈건 데 먹거나라 옷메나 되니 정말 낙보였나 되니 셈 터부 용거래 터부 올롱로 그래서 셈 타바타바래로 그래.
The reason is when we close our eyes and we block out all light, it's only dark inside. When we've got our eyes closed, we only see darkness. Then our mind becomes dull and drowsy.
되니 조바 침본다 곰나나 델리장 되니 닉시고 그래.
공다 양자 송나.
다리 공거도요. 닉시 고래 되니 닉 마시나 되니 심 타바타바 닉 점정나 심 타바타바리로 고래 되니 닉시 고래 조바침 보이나는 델레장 닉시 고래.
So the Dzogchen teachings particularly emphasize the need to keep one's eyes open during meditation practice.
다텐디인디 다 고야데 간디 고거르즈나 되니 묵총총즈 되니 마르타네 묵총총즈 되니 다 시고거레 되니 시즈에 그래 다 묵총총즈 시고거레.
So what we should do with our gaze is to have our eyes semi-closed.
어때 즉바리 되니 덤바트 되니 욱 되니 파르트가 동이네 겁나 되니 파른로와다 서르용와 창마되니 카당 나당 니가 그나니 판조순로 시고를 이나양 되니 치트 되니 족보시야당 다모시야다 되니 고 말이 남긴 간리나 되니 그 초콜릿 딥덤바레.
And the seventh point is to breathe naturally. So breathing through both our nose and our mouth as we ordinarily would. There's no need to regulate our breath by attempting to accelerate or slow it down. Just breathing naturally is fine.
어다 대소란 니기 남는 추 던제 그랬더니 가서 상학가나라샤나 대소 탐지 볼라 짐슨 망보샤지요 그랬다. 다이나 다른 짐슨 대소 다른 네급스 작거리 창마가 당보 검잡이네 겁나 리츠기 약보 시네 검잡나 대 셈그나라 셈 약보 용야 셈그나라 남톡 망보 메팔라 판톡 요레.
So these are the 7 points of proper meditation posture. In the Vajrayana, there are many different reasons and explanations that are given for the advantages of these 7 different points. We're not going to go into these reasons today. Let it suffice to say that by adopting a good posture and paying attention to these points, then this brings advantages to our mind during meditation, particularly in helping us not to give rise to excessive discursive thought.
되니 때 도나시 고사 당보 리츠그리 되니 다 도나시 고사 니파디 되니 가서 룽루 사르와즈니 되니 가서 셈가나라 요피 남톡 망보다 되니 데 룽 되니 파르 땅고 그래다 조데 남톡 망보데 파메바시고 그래.
So of the 3 main things that we need to pay attention to in our preliminary stage of our meditation session, the first, our bodily posture. The second is expelling stale breath. And in this second stage, we expel our stale breath, and we do so chiefly for in order to assist us in eliminating discursive thought.
다때 베브자나 가초더니 자마자비니 겁나 담보 포르와더니 즈고레 포르와더니 츠거나라 즈니 장마시니 더니 티나라 자말루니 자고레 베틴라보 가초 곰자피니 겁나 가초 셈거나라 요피더니 남톡신실로바 남톡 득보 데소 탐조보 파르실로라 땅니 메바시니 더니 장마 셈거나라 장마시니 더니 남톡 곰디 곰잡나 더니 곰약보용 거레.
So just as when we are going to take a meal, we first clean the vessel that we're going to eat from, and then we put food into it and begin to eat, so too with our meditation. To begin with, by expelling our breath, we remove our negative thoughts and emotions through expelling our breath, and thereby make our minds clean for our meditation practice. And by doing this assists us in having a good meditation session.
더니 남톡도서 참만 간디고니 메바시고 그러지나 더니 욱더니 파르통와다 더니 더니 곰잡야 곰잡게 셈가나라 곰잡게 더니라 때니 더니 파르더니 디 메바 디 파르 코바가나니 셔 셈가나니 셔 더니 동고 그래.
So how do we go about expelling our thoughts, our discursive thoughts, our negative thoughts through expelling our breath? We do this primarily by relying on our breath as well as a visualization that we do at the time that we are expelling our breath.
오야 다때양 때라 탑시요레 장마가 달라 딜라 따지 락바가 담봉아 저 락바 용바가 데닌 태몽거 lakpam zumo chung gongma te la teni ta stunlak zegre ti tsalan teni nango gre.
So everybody, please do like this. Raise your left hand and bring your thumb to the base of your fourth or your ring finger.
Tenim zogo jita tokla jago gre te la dorji khasar zegre.
And then close your fingers over the top of your thumb, and this forms what we call a Vajra fist.
Oh yeah. Teni khasar ti nga so teni kangba ga teni la sa yepa ta yuma nikala teni chaksa ni yore se teni parsa ta dorsa ja ga jingmai tongmai. teni ni yore de di teni la yuma ga chaksa ga tola mar de zi shik de zi panding nan go re.
And then we bring this Vajra fist into the point, the great channel in the fold of our left thigh, and we need to apply. When we press this point, we need to do so with the tip of our Vajra fist, and we apply some pressure.
Oh yeah. Tani ta lakpa yepa ga yang temong ga tani stunlak ga tani tsanan ni tani zomo simde mar jogo ren zomo chik de gongzik zegren de yar tani kyang go res.
And then with the other hand, we again bring our thumb to the base of our fourth finger, close over our thumb, this time 3 fingers, and keep our pointer finger extended.
Tani khashegen de shegre yang khashege yang chi zomo jan shesra jan yore ta te kangshina chapar menduzin de shina chokores.
There are some people have different instructions for what we do here. However, keeping our forefinger extended like this is fine.
Tani talak pakayar to ni tani pimo go tolan tani tambun jogo re.
So we begin by resting the back of our right hand on our right knee with the pointer finger extended.
Ta tani shi sarti tani ta saman tani ta go re. Lakpa yepa tani yar yone tani nakong yepa ga tola nang go re.
So we bring our right hand from our knee to our right nostril and then press it.
Teni nakong yepa ga tola mar manam bi kongdon tani wukching ngab go re. Tani zine wukching yara ngab ne tani nang go re.
So before we actually close our right nostril with our pointer finger, we take one breath, we inhale one breath, and then we bring our finger to our nostril to close it.
Tani wukching yara ngab chati tani mar rangbo zamar tong go re zindari shini.
And then we exhale the breath.
Oh yeah. Tani ti kap se kandi sam go re zina zo to tani ti kap ko tani samba gumji to zo re.
And while we are expelling the breath, we do a particular kind of visualization.
Tani ti kap se kandi sam go re zina tani so rang tani nyumung ba ndo chak tang je dang da tum ngar je chak to da norna sem ga na la yo pi nyumung ban ra ma mambo tani to nga su sama la tani yo re oya tani ti nyumung ba sama ta tani nakpo towa da bo tani partana tani khatok nakpo yengkan tani hali pa chok ba tani tin ba chok o tani yemba tani zeta sone tani shir tani nakong go na ni par shila thon song sam ni tani sam goes.
So what we do here is visualize that all of our negative emotions, hatred, anger, desire, etc., takes the form of a black vapor, a smoke-like black vapor that is extremely dark and extremely filthy. And in expelling this vapor from us, we visualize that we are expelling these negative emotions from us in the form of this black vapor.
Long nakpo de kandi zina perna ngazo khori tini baksok shia ga tindi ga langkhor khashi ga tani Vietnam zina ko ga chayu oya tani tindi ga te langkhor ka nala tani nam te shakyo khen ga tani chakha chen ga tani langkhor chimbo to so ga tani towa yongsa ga nala tani towa tindi towa nakpo towa tindi chokba tindi yongore zita khashi la America te diona menamesida de teni chigri de yangna nga sope na dosur teni mbusa dosur mbasa saumei dosur mbasa teni takhung gna la yara teni tawa nakpo teni tawa partana pe tawa chokpa nakpo teni yung duwaze tate chiso go shiyo jire kori ko teni baksok sheyala tona hale po shey ko menkan so na la teni mambo yore o teni nda bozla teni ngaso nyomomba ndocha je dang tum tans teni zreni teni kirni teni lipo na kongo na ne parshelola tonsong samne teni sam god.
So how do we visualize this filthy black vapor or this filthy black smoke? One way that we can imagine it is as some the filthy kind of truck or cars that pollute the environment, and from their exhaust pipes come a very filthy black dirty smoke that is very polluting to the environment. I'm not sure whether or not you have cars or trucks like this in America, but in any case, you can imagine it. The other thing that we can imagine is the kind of smoke that comes belching from a coal stack, a black, polluted, again, very filthy smoke. I'm sure that you have seen or that you know this kind of these kind of coal chimneys. Many people these days pay attention to environmental pollution, so I'm sure you can bring it to mind. In any case, we visualize that our negative emotions, our afflictions, desire, hatred, anger, etc., in the form of this very thick, black, dirty smoke is being expelled from our bodies.
Teni parchu tang chai jini teni yang teni lot go gore teni lot ni yang wo ching teni ching ni yang tang ni ba teni go gore teni korma chu ni sim go gore.
So after having performed this exhalation once, we remove our finger from our nostril, take another inhalation and repeat it again. So in total we do this 3 times.
Teni she chai jini teni nga chol lakpa ye ta yomba ni po jipo jab go gore teni lakpa ye pa gan teni shini mar nan teni yomba gan teni shini teni yang chu ni sim ji na kong ye pa gan na ne teni sim go gore te chama gumlik ta te so chama chik pares.
So after having it done 3 times on one side, we then completely change over and perform the same expelling of stale breath on the other side, again for 3 times.
Teni nga so na kong ko na ne par teni bug jwa te la kato ko jamba teni gum khen yo yore ta nga so ngondu kap sa chama teni nakpo gum na chokore.
During other practices, sometimes we visualize the color of the smoke to be different colors. However, during the preliminary stage of our meditation session, we visualize the smoke that we are expelling to be black in color.
Teni te sim shi chai jini ta la pa ye pa yom pa ni kan de shi ne khasar de shi ne ye ni ka nyam de shi ne teni ni ka nyam de shi ne teni tim nyam de teni lasta ye pa yom pa la tishi la mar non go re.
So after we have completed this 3 times on the other side, we then bring both of our hands together in Vajra fists and press them into the channel point in the fold of our left and right thighs.
Gebala non ji mare zia lasta ga thola teni tong mai ji mai ko chasa ga thola non go re.
So we're not pressing our waist, we're pressing the channel point in the fold between our left and right thighs.
Yeah. Teni te shi chai jini teni na kong ni ka ga na ni tang bo ya bung nop go re. Teni shi ni teni ni ka ga na ni mar teni korma chu ni sim ro go re.
And then we inhale with both through both nostrils and then exhale through both nostrils, and we do this 3 times.
Tat shi chai jini teni nga chu ta so so rang lipo te teni namtok chama namtok dugbo chama shilo la thun ne teni changma re ne pe nga chu shir ka jian thong sa ga shir ka phorwa teni chunang la tini changma changkyang re pa ro shinang chama pan thong de gen 어딘지 약보 짱마 짱짱딘지 리 송삼니 same ko la te gum goes.
So after we have done this, we have inhaled and exhaled 3 times through both of our nostrils, we then visualize that we have expelled all of our negative thoughts and emotions from our body, and that we are now extremely clean, just like a glass vessel that has been washed to a pristine state. We are now, our bodies, our minds are now extremely clean.
어따티 언나돈 니바데리 데니 다 언나 선바지니 데니 돈능시고야 선바데리 선바티 심고 돌아레.
So that is the second major point that we pay attention to during the preliminary stage of our meditation session. And we are now moving on to the third point of attention, and this relates to preparing our minds.
데니 셈고 돌아 당봉아 좀 던기 남칼라 데니 돈바상지 샥자타파 티 곰고레.
So in this, according to this third point, we visualize that the Shakyamuni is in front of us.
데니 던기 남카르지나 칸리르지나 가좀 고토니 파르 문쇼라 파르데니 즈강지나 즈강지는 데니 니발라 즈강제그레스 데니 고토니 파르 데니 즈강고그레 데니 티니 야르 즈강고그레 즈강지는 데니 파르 데니 다 파친 데니 라볼라 데니 던기 남카제그레스.
So when we say to visualize the Shakyamuni Buddha in the sky in front of us, we are referring to a place that is 1 forearm's length above us and 1 forearm's length in front of us. And so it's at this point that we visualize the Shakyamuni Buddha.
데니 딘 고토니 파르 즈강조 데니 티 야르 즈강조 단디 딘다 볼라 던기 남카제고레.
So 1 forearm's length above us and 1 forearm's length in front of us.
아야, 데니 티 톨랑아서 메톡 밤만딘디 곰니 데니 메톡 밤마가 데니 당가 나라 데니 톰바상지 샤차타바 나랑랑라 서칸 코니 데니 비용컨 데니 곰고레.
And we visualize the Shakyamuni Buddha seated in a lotus facing our direction.
데니 테 곰차비 지니 데니 가서 테라 소란데 고레 톰바상지 샤차타바라 소란데 데니 소란데 그 데니 츠 톰바상지 샤차타바가 데니 흥아 데니 따야타 엄머니머니 마마나이소 하지라 데니라 보였나자 데마였나 데니 톰바상지 샤차타바가 산 도수 쯧 조조데 셈가나라 데니 따빠야보 장네 소란데 약보시 고레.
So having visualized the Shakyamuni Buddha in this way, we now pray to him reciting his heart mantra or by reciting his name, whichever we decide to do. The most important thing is that we do so praying to the Shakyamuni Buddha with an attitude of intense devotion.
데니 톰바상지 샥자타바당 소소랑가 라마 데짜위 라마 니강 오일미 데니 곰나 데니 텔리장 역보요레.
And if we're able to visualize that the Shakyamuni Buddha is inseparable from our own root teacher, then this is even better.
데니 테 곰차위 지니 데니 나초스테 손딥시니 손딥테 간디 손딥티 스시 고레제나 다 톰바상지 샥자타바데니 다리 나랑 그 곰디나라 데니 나랑 그 지르니 약보 데니 nga 데니 곰토야 데니라 데니 톰바상지 샥자타바 나라 신릅 데니 나로 낭지니 데니 소란데 손딥 그냥 보티 데레.
So we then pray to the Shakyamuni Buddha, and we do so praying that he bless us in this meditation session so that we achieve good meditation practice in Shamatha meditation.
데니 테 영랑보고 말제 페나가서 곰티니 쳬쳬 찡자 보텐디즈라 곰 잡지나 데니 카르마 nganra te karma chönra dendi ma to ba yang bogo chapar karma nganra botendi na chokore tabde bunda uzushina chokore.
So this stage of our meditation preparation needn't take too long. If we have a meditation session of 1 hour, then this stage might just take 5 minutes or so. So it's quite a simple practice, a simple stage.
다티 곰차위 지니 되니 가초더니 톰바상지 샥자타바데 타카니 철더니 갈레 옷로네 되니 타망아마 되니 옷 총총 되니 산만다고 가초고 되니 되니 창화가 되니 창독직다고 되니 옷 총총 되니 결송와 되니 곰고레.
And having prayed to the Shakyamuni Buddha to bless us in this meditation session, we then visualize him dissolving or melting into light, a bead of light or a dot of light that is as small as one bead on a strand of prayer beads.
Teni ti otte teni soso teni shu shitsik nani marasone soso lig nala sone teni nyankala nyanki thalla thombi kapsu teni ot chong te da soso rang sim nipo par njini yirmit te ker teni resong sam ta tonla sanje shakcha pa teni yeshi dang teni ngarang rang sim ni teni yirmi resong sam ni teni sam go re.
We then visualize that this bead of light enters the crown of our head and then descends to our hearts. And at this point, we visualize that the Shakyamuni's wisdom has mingled with our own minds and are in fact inseparable.
Teni ti kapsa te samsarvi jini teni semkanala namtok cheyang mafsambar teni tez dego re tan deba la yang samlo matang maong bala samlo matang tata yang samlo matang ba namtok tamche par kirni teni namtok kanga me pa ga nani teni tez dego re karma khashis.
And in this state, one of giving rise to no thoughts at all, no thoughts of past, no thoughts of present, and no thoughts of future, we simply reside in this state for some time.
Teni te yang yang boz go mare teni ta namtok chiki yung ikapse teni ta samjana chokoret.
However, we don't need to reside in this state for a particularly long period of time. When we give rise to a thought, a discursive thought, then we can bring this stage to a conclusion and move on to the next.
Ta teso tsama shi tsari jini teni ta ngune tani gumgungujung ngomate la teni tengro re.
So, having completed these 3 preliminary exercises, we now move on to the core part of our meditation practice.
Teni teso shi tsari jini teni ta nge gum jab go ndug te na nge gum jab kayan ta gum di chizg ton la jab kare zina teni nge simchin thamche ko tonda teni ngarang sangje go teni ngarang sangje ya che ta teni nge gum di jab kayin samne teni shanchip ko sim yangkir teni shik teni sam go res.
And prior to beginning with the core of our meditation practice, we need to bring to mind why it is that we are meditating, and that is for the benefit of all living beings. And that in order to be of benefit to all living beings, we seek to attain Buddhahood, and it is for this reason that we are engaging in meditation practice today. So making an aspiration of bodhicitta like this, we begin with the core stage of our meditation practice.
Teni ta jani gomsar ngoma tela thingro re ti yanche tela teni gom gu ngondro je ngaso gomla teni thoma ta parta thama ta smyo ji teni thoma de re teni ti ngaso gom kang tang kang jamna teni teni jamna teni yakboyo re je te ngaso sang kalila gom thamche teni goni jab gare teni chim do parshin thakban ra teni na yang teni yang ngaso long partang ra teni mambot yo mare.
So what we have completed then is the beginning stage of our meditation session. So we approach our meditation session with these 3 stages in mind: the beginning, the middle, and the end. And all Vajrayana meditation practice is divided into these 3 stages. In sutric meditation, there is less expelling of breath and so on.
Ota tendi goni teni gom jab go re ti yanchula gom go ngonro ze gare teni ta gom go ngushu ngoma ta thikti teni ngaso teni de lama mapham ga teni jerne simla tani jerne gom sirti thone mar teni sha gare.
So, having now completed the preliminary stage or the beginning stage of our meditation session, we are ready for the core part of our practice. And for this, we are going to be basing our practice on the instructions given in Lama Mipam's Shamatha and Vipassana instructions.
Teni shirtang nga tsu teni zhengni gomsirti la ha lepa nga mambo yore te shir nga tsu nangba sangi wa nyantu lugla teni zhengni gomsir yang ha lepa mambo ndu teni mdo nangla yang zhengni gomsir mambo ndu ngaka nangla yang zhengni gomsir ha lepa mambo yore perna teni pardo tika trik ta wak chikpo la samlo tangba yana ti nangla zhengni mantawa chiksim teni te gomsir teni ndu teni gomluk teni ha lepa mambo yore.
There are a great deal of different shamatha meditation methods and techniques in the Buddhist tradition. The listener vehicle has its shamatha meditation techniques. There are sutric shamatha meditation techniques. There are shamatha meditation techniques or methods in the Vajrayana teachings. Just in the Book of the Dead alone, there are 13 different instructions for different shamatha practices.
Ota tindi indi tini ta di nangni tini nga so tini gum tego ta mabham sangka tini simla tani gum jablik te re zindo.
So for our purposes today, we are going to be learning and practicing Lama Mipam's instructions on engaging in shamatha practice by observing one's own mind.
Tani gum jablik te tini mambo yo ati jengni gum sar mambo yo pati so tamchipo sar dana tini nig nanglan da gare chikte la sammit tini ta jengni gum sar ta chikte la samchi jengni gum sar zindi te re ze tin samchi jengni zena perna kap sa thangkhala ta ya ta kap sa tini lung tini hung jeng la tini samlo ta ya ta yang tini yeke tini yingzhi la samlo ta la ta tini halipa mambo zito ndu tesu tamche pola tini samchi ga tini di jengni tini zegare.
So of all the different kinds of shamatha meditation methods there are, it's possible to divide them into two categories, and that is one category which is of formless meditation, and the other category which is concentrative meditation. So in terms of concentrative meditation, this involves using an object for our meditation that our consciousness is fixated on, such as a tanka, or using winds, or visualizing letters and syllables.
Tani sammit tini ta de jani zeate tanka ta remo ta te so chichi ta mare tini semgana la tani ndu ba jiang mosambi ngani namtok mepi ngani tani ta jani gom gare tela samme jani zengdos.
In terms of formless meditation or formless shamatha meditation, this doesn't involve visualizing or concentrating on any tankas or pictures or anything like this. It is simply a form of meditation where we don't give rise to any thoughts or fixate on a particular object and simply rest in awareness.
Oya tini ta nga tsu lama mapam sangka tini simla tani zhengni gomtsirziya te shokchini mar tini tsingdir gyab tini shokchini nga tsu nyamlin chilik te tini shanni tini riyu sheka yent.
So from here on, we are going to be learning or studying Lama Mipam's instructions on shamatha meditation, which involve observing our mind. And as we go through the text, we are also going to incorporate actual practice.
Tini nga tsu boyik shinkin yo nana boyik la tini tana chokundu, teme nana tini kerang tso lagna, tini inji ka tola girni tini tip tini chasangwa tini ndu tini ti tola tajur shini tini shiye shokchini nga tsu tini inji ka tip te la ta shokchini nga tsu tini reshi jablik te la tana.
So for those of you here who understand Tibetan, you can read the Tibetan text. For most of you here, we have a completely translated English version of the text. So by following the text as we go, we can gain a very good understanding. So we are now going to proceed, slowly looking at each line at a time. So I pay homage to Manjushri. First of all, we prostrate to Manjushri. So as Buddhists, prior to engaging in a particular form of Dharma action, we begin by paying homage to the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas with an attitude of reverence.
ni pena thangala tini mupanda da susoranga wuk tini jengla mupanda da yana nga so kap sata do da tini rumunda mda tini la mupa yore de yore da te soyang yakbori da teli kyang ti susoranga simte la tani tini simte la muni tini gomna ti jerne gom yakshu tiri tela tini jerne te tini ndrabyong ko rez.
So the first two lines, if mind is observed, Shamatha will be accomplished, and gradually Vipassana will see the way things truly are. So we have many different Shamatha meditation methods available to us. Ones involving focusing or concentrating on tankas or on the breath, or otherwise different pictures or inscriptions on stones or on the earth. However, better than, while all of these methods are very good, even better is an approach whereby we observe our mind. And this is the best possible form of Shamatha meditation that we can practice.
Ngasu sim gat na mungni tini jirni te yakpo zindrbyona tini kale langtong tini tongbanyi ka tonte yang siung gore sim go rangmu shini tini zogba chimbo ta shakja chimbo te so yang tini hako yung gore zi jirni tindrib tsabi jini.
And upon the foundation of a strong foundation of Shamatha practice, it is then possible for us to achieve the aims of profound insight, a realization of emptiness or the nature of the mind according to the Dzogchen or Mahamudra teachings.
Teni tela ranyang tombi ngang so teni tanga so sim te gombi ne kabna so sorang ka teni sim te kangla teni taggo re ze ngaso teni sim ta lapa nga la teni mukpa taggo re ta yana teni nyang na la taggo re yana phoa na la taggo re kangla taggo re ze na teni so teni rang ka nyang na la teni sim teni taggo re thomar teni nyang te ngaso pe na sang do je thaba teni na la na nyang te so so nyang te teni metok pa mandabjin dabji teni gumni teni rapu gumni teni tinala yeke gumya teni mambo yore te shertang ka sang ka nala teni ndi kapse teni gosa mareta na yena teni te nyang te tomba teni pena metok pa mandabota tinala tomba shini tinala sim mupatani dena teni nduk yore ndi kapse ngaso shertang sang ka nala yo pandawo teni metok ka yib ndawota teni kyang gosa mare shertang nya ganala teni mupatani ndugna tinduk yore.
Within the empty space in your heart, draw consciousness innately lucid and clear, inward and rest. So at this stage, we approach our mind as dwelling at the point of our heart. So where do we approach our mind as being or residing? Is it in our brain or in our stomach or in our chest? For the purposes of this meditation, we should approach our mind as being located at the space of our heart. In the Vajrayana, there are many meditation methods where we visualize our mind in the form of a lotus at our hearts. And for the sake of this meditation, it's not necessary to visualize like this, for example, the shape or the specific details of a lotus flower. The important thing is that we visualize or approach our mind as existing in an empty way at our hearts.
Teni shirtang nga tsu simzea te korang teni zik teni mepa teni zire, zik mepi nipa teni zire. Tena nga tsu teni simti lapa nga la yo, nyanga nga la yo, kangpa nga la yo, zini teni zirgo na, te zekakpo re, ze korang teni ni tashik di nga la yo re, lipo di nga la yo re, zirgo na zekakpo re. Te kakpo yinpi jimsung kang re zina, teni korang zik chen teni zik yo pa teni zi ma re zi, zik mepa teni zi yin sarti, teni ni di nga la yo re, zirgo na teni kamo re, in
general, of course, it's very difficult for us to pinpoint our mind as existing at any particular point in our bodies. And the reason for this is that our minds are formless. Our mind is a formless kind of power or a formless kind of capacity. So even though it is difficult or not possible for us to say where specifically in our body our mind is located, for the purposes of meditation, it is fine for us to visualize our mind as located in our hearts.
Teni te sim te korang nyang te korang te kanji zi gum go ti su thola teni to nang mambo shi go mending di kap sang aso sim nang nyang na la ta ning ding na tin ge re pe na sang ka teni gum khasin da po shi ni teni nyang teni yang damda jamba gum jin da su su sandun teni shi go samare zo nga so sim nyang na la nyang tong bi na la teni nyang tong ba yin sam teni tong ba shi tang nyang na la teni tong ba nyanga ye da yun la teni tongba chongchong teni mambo yore zi yena teso gong la teni chak yo sa chak me sa teni mambo yore da yena teso nga so samlo tang go mendu gang tar de gombi che tere te yena nyang teni tongba yin ti tongba ga na la teni ngarang ga sem yo samne teni sam jak na tin zhigri.
So here, it's not necessary for us to visualize in any great detail how our mind is in the space, the empty space in our hearts. In tantric meditation, there is quite often a lot of detail required at this stage of visualization practice. However, for the purposes of this meditation, it's fine if we simply visualize our minds as existing in the empty space in our heart. And even though, of course, our hearts in reality, they have cavities, a left and right cavity, there's blood, there's vessels, etc. We don't need to concern ourselves with these details for the point of view of this stage of the practice. We simply visualize our minds as in the empty space in our hearts.
Teni nyang tomba gom teni nyang tomba nang la teni smupakta teni tadni teni nduk japi kapsu teni kandi chorwa kandi yongare zena tela rangna tombi nga sali sange wala nazi teni ti kapsa nga so namtok mambo maki kapsa kandi yongare zena sali zena teni nga so sim tela namtok mambo mena yang teni korang saru reze te pena nga so marme na teni marme lungo makyo ni dede yo pine kam na teni korang la ot yore kangstan marme yo pine kam na marme la otin du ten ra pore nga so namtok shipa yin sarvi kapsa teni korang namin na korang saru shini korang rang hako den ke tela zegare teni sale zikite teni zire.
So as we draw our consciousness inward and rest, this empty space in our heart is what feeling comes when we do this. It's one where our mind appears as extremely lucid and extremely clear. So just like a butter lamp that is lit, it's light, the butter lamp is lit, but it's not moving, its light is there, it is aware of itself. And this is how our minds are at this point.
잡았던 디 값으더니 나 속살레지나더니 남독만보 만봄 추니 다값 값으더니 남독만봄 추 더니 남독대초더니 할리 바거더니 남독 용장만보 용네더니 심 사로 어떤데 냠순용 마텀 켄더니 심 코랑 간디긴 함먹고 남독만보 다 슈르르 거더니 돈닥만보만보 심 거나라 샤르니 슈르르 거더니 나만 데비 돈닥 마옴비 돈닥 대수 마톡바 심 코랑 간디연더니 냠순용 못에 픽업 든디 요래 드니 든디 마임 바즈글라제게 요래 살레제나.
So in so far as our minds, when they are in a lucid and clear state, this is the opposite of the way that our minds are when we find them full of discursive thought. So there are times when many discursive thoughts are rising, thoughts about many things in the external world, thoughts about the past, thoughts about the future. And this state of mind is the opposite of what we mean by the mind when it is in a lucid and clear state.
어때라더니 남독만보 시로를 좀 추와 양세그리 때라 고파 양세그리 추와 고파 강세나 남독만보 시르 드니 만보 추송와 때려 어딘지 마임버 심코랑 사르니 사르킬리 드니 네바 때라제그리 사르킬리 지나더니 베나가서 드님 추총총 드니지 있나 드님 추때라더니 롱메비네 겁나 드니 바르르병 요 말에 치니르마영 요 말에 코랑 드니 더 치데 사르 시니 드니 ndung kare ta tin ra potela sale jegre shirtang ti sale sangi de sola ndamda mambu kol mambu yore de jerne kapse tindi kole na chokore.
So this state of clearness and lucidity is one where there is no giving rise to a continuous stream of discursive thought. We can liken it to a small lake when there is no wind whatsoever and there are no ripples or waves on the lake face at all. So even though there are different explanations of clearness and lucidity, these qualities in different meditation practices, for the purposes of shamatha practice, we should understand it in this way.
어때니 상해와지 지도 간디즈르제 그래서나 깝깝승 아초더니 곰잡이네 겁나 더니 남독만보요 말에 남독지경 맘초한다고 든지리다 있나요? 더니 심특 더니 샹와지 그래 샹와지나 얼묵바양제 그래 샹와양제 그래 다 배장나 아초 레카만보 레니 더니 레카만보 레니 더니 김낭라 더니 세피네 겁나 더니 셈건낭라 삼로 가면 메파 베나 김건낭라 용니 더니 모츠가 돌아 득장나 더니 삼로 만보 유삼 무슨 든디 지지 멘컨 더니 셈 더니 말 더니 지 니뜬 로그르지나 니뜨양 더니 소 멘컨 더니 탑타와 든디 데라제 그래다 든디 마임 바즈라 상네 제그레
Kamputi jula yang dia sung na nge komasu.
Pe jana ngacho jagzena fatai. Ya ta tendi zila zegre tin na pe na ngacho ti sangne ze ati sim xiangwa maimba, xiangwa maimba. Pe na ngacho gongmo zama mambo za jana te gongze mambo za ni tini kimla yong gomz jabna tini ndong musin nyamsim yong tab gare sim gana la tini tawa 고야 고지메 바 남쪽도 만보여 말다 이나 심 타버타바린 로지 데라즈 타버타바지나 고바.
So when we refer to the mind that is lucid, it is a mind that is the opposite of the state that we sometimes find ourselves in, where there may not be so many thoughts in our mind, we may not be giving rise to much discursive thought. However, we are in a state of mental dullness, in a state of mental sinking. And we can liken this to after a hard day's work, going home in the evening, having a heavy meal, and then sitting down to meditation in such such a state, we would relatively easily find ourselves in a kind of a daze that is not one where we have many discursive thoughts, however, one where we are rather dull and sinking. So this state of lucidity here that we're referring to is one that is not like this.
다 되니 살리와다 상해와 지바 되니까서 냠도 투 동정나 되니 냠도 동정나 데라 심기 무지 그래.
So when we put these two qualities together, we combine the qualities of lucidity and clarity together, then we have what we refer to as the essence of the mind.
갑갑선들라 심치르지 심치롱마지 곰바곰맨 된디용세 그래.
Sometimes we refer to this as the naked mind, the mind with no clothes.
이나 양 심치롱마지와 때라 되니 양 저니 갑다 한통 그 망부고지요 더 저니 갑레.
The naked mind as such is referred to in the context of Shamatha meditation and Vipassana meditation. It's explained a little bit differently insofar as our usage at the moment, we're using it in the Shamatha context.
양나 빼자라 가서 되니 추어서 그나라 되니 세거서 그나라 되니 롱잡네 되니 더왈 망보 되니 요나 되니 발럽돼서 롱때메 빠창네 되니 발럽돼서 사마 메니 되니 코랑사로 신이 데디오 비네크 되니 치 발럽양메 치 니르마양메 강메니 잠보 신이 데디오 비네크 틴다오레지 심대양 가서 심티페나 되니 추즈이나 다 디네크임다오텔라 살리상에서 그래.
So our mind, when it is in this state, is extremely still. It is, again, just like a lake that may have been, the lake face may have been extremely turbulent when strong winds were blowing. However, when the winds subside, then the lake face returns to an extremely still state where there are no waves or ripples whatsoever. And this is the state of the mind that we refer to, or that we mean when we talk about the qualities of lucidity and clarity.
되니 살리 생이완데 냠수 용와티 나초 카슨 근차트 끊나라셔요. 나초 심디 되니 말 고르트고 돌아 톤송와레지 염바.
So this our mind, when it is in this state, is like what we spoke about in yesterday afternoon's teaching, the state of the mind returning to zero.
되니 고르트고 돌아 되니 톤비 네크브텔라 되니 동그 돈이 되니 강레지나 텔라 근지제요. 근지 남시제요. 제그레.
And when our mind returns to zero point like this, in reality, what is happening, it is returning to the eighth consciousness, or the all-encompassing consciousness.
되니 근지제야데 가서 빼차가 돈이 따고나 빼 뇨다 mam보주셔요. 되니 빼차가 돈이 따고나 식감모레.
And if, in terms of the all-encompassing consciousness, if we are going to learn about it or understand it by consulting scriptures, then we will discover a great deal of extremely complex and complicated explanations, and it's difficult to gain an understanding, a clear understanding, based on reading these scriptures.
Tina teni nyamnyung ko goni na te yang teni kamogo marezi te chindi zina pe jana teni ngacho lister jangni teni jigna shlola jigna teni te tarambo la jigni teni hajang kani teni jigtsawani matpi ne kabna teni satang gatala teni shlola teni nye jana teni ti kaps susurang sem kandis re tana teni ti kas ngacho go semti teni gortik zina chokore jerong mazina chokore 근지나 초코리 살리 상의지나 초코리 티톨라 티캅스 코랑 랑식 티톨라 레비오리.
However, in terms of actually experiencing our mind in this state of zero, it's not necessary for us to take such a complicated approach. One thing we can do is go outside and run really far and run really fast, exert ourselves completely until we feel that we can run no more, and then fling ourselves onto our backs on a grassy pasture. And if at this point we observe our mind, the state that it is in, we will find that it has returned to 0 point, that it is in a state of nakedness, that we are observing the all-encompassing consciousness or a mind of lucidity and clarity.
다 시바 난데 그니 비적 셈지셈 라무지샤 데리 인디 티 시바데 코랑 테니 살레 상네제야 티톨라 테니 그니 제나 그제나 남톡 상마 메파데 코랑 티 모레 소나 테니 테라 그제 그래자 마요 말 티나라 느나 테니 테라 셈그 셈라 무제 그래 옛나야 티 값은 아랑초 셈 테니 묵사 그테니 셈 찍당 양 뭉큰 그테니 셈 잠바 테니 니요 말에 코랑 랑거랑 야보즈 냠스미용 톱 그래 rang nyam siak bozu nyongwa tela tani semji semla mu zeni tindi sem ke semla ta yang zegre sem ke semla mu yang zegre yang na tani sem khorang ka khorang nyam sim nyong yang zegre.
So if we are able to do this, then we are through. If we are able to do this, then we find the mind observing the mind observing itself. And insofar as saying that the mind is observing itself, we're not dividing the mind into an observer and that which is being observed. This is a case of the mind directly experiencing itself. So we can say that it's the mind observing itself, or the mind watching itself, or again the mind directly experiencing itself.
어야 다티 간디진 티닝 아주 냠뇽고고니 따고레 마토 바티니 카우샤나 mam보샤탑고 말이스.
As to what this is like, this is something that we need to directly experience through our practice. It's not something that we can explain so well using words.
당아서 곰잡고 그래. 테니 간디즈레 테니 살리 상아지와데 간디즈레 가서 카르마카실라 곰잡니 따고 그래.
So what this state of lucidity and clarity is like, we need to experience this for ourselves. So we're going to do some meditation for a couple of minutes.
데니 교랑 조금 당공양 곰잡송, 다나양 곰잡송, 곰몽보 잡송다 옛나 다롱 가서 카르마카시 곰잡고 두지.
So, of course, you all practiced yesterday evening and practiced again this morning, but we're going to do still another bit of practice now.
어때니 가서 탕란등니 쩌종신인등나 초콜릿 데니 톡라데니 데 급딱 톡란등나 저거리 강등나 초콘두즈.
치즈그 톨란등나 칸볼라.
탕란등나 초콘두즈. 탕지나. 사톡란등나 초콜릿. 데니 급딱 톡란등나 초콘디시난 저건두즈.
So it's fine during this meditation practice if you sit on the floor, or if you prefer to sit on a chair, that's fine too.
So the
7 points of bodily posture that we mentioned, everybody please pay attention to these. And it's okay for the time being if we don't expel stale breath. And we are not going to pray to the Shakyamuni Buddha either, although you would do so ordinarily in a formal meditation session. So in terms of the mind observing the mind, this can be explained in a very complex way, but however, it is fine if we just understand this as our mind giving rise to no discursive thoughts, no thoughts of the past, no thoughts of the present, and no thoughts of the future, and simply abiding or resting in this state of no thought.
아야, 되니 다 가서 참아 소소랑 거더니 향대 되니 더 동바더니 낭 되니 동바인 건더니 인 삼니 되니 삼고 그래.
Everybody, please begin by visualizing your mind as an empty space in your heart.
되니 다 띠낭라 가서 샘띠 띠낭라요 삼니데 삼 남토고 띠낭라요 메더니 삼지 말에 가서 띠낭라 묵바띠나 따주잖아 되니 그래. 샘거낭라 띠 잠반다고 띠낭라 따주잖아 되니 그래.
It's not necessary for us to ask ourselves whether our mind is here or there. It's fine if we are just aware of our mind in the empty space in our hearts.
되니 가서 다 샘마라 되니 거르트거 돌아라고 그래.
And now our minds are brought back to zero.
되니 남토강 메파시니 되니 거랑 ngô càng đi gì là tí thọ là giang này thế này giảm ba tê rê mà rê đơn rư mân rư thế này chỉ chứ mấy ba xin này thế này tí thọ nên đứt gỗ đấy.
And now, in a state of giving rise to no thought or no questioning about whether things are this way or that way, we simply abide in this.
thế này tí các sinh ngã số thế này xem tí nam tục mê na yang thế này khoang rang thế này rê samban đâu saro thế này cô thập cái đấy. nam tục mê na yang xem khoang là nam tục mê na yang khoang cái ngô đến đi đâu rê samban tí saro cô thập cái đấy.
And so, without thinking discursively in any way, it's possible for us to understand that this is the essence of the mind is like this.
thế tí nhắm nhung rồi ta ngã số tí nhắm nhung thì thôi nên được chỉ tập được yên.
And this is an experience of the mind, and so we need to prepare to rest in this experience of mind.
ta 참마가 남쪽 제뇽 땅 고래.
So everyone needs to reduce the thoughts in their mind, make them fewer.
어디나라 내내 가서 까르마르 나티나라 내고.
And we're going to rest in this state for 5 minutes.
아야 다더니 곤즈크연.
And we're going to begin now.
야, 되니 까망아 파치레 송스.
So that's about 5 minutes.
되니 다 살리 상가지나 고jen도.
Did you observe lucidity and clarity?
다 간린다지 냠용즈 되니 셔다 생각서 매 가시. 샹칸 아요.
Is there anyone who would like to talk about how they found their mind?
Yeah.
Whenever I meditate and my mind relaxes a little, I almost always start to fall asleep.
Can you just say that one more time?
My mind moves so fast normally from the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever it begins to settle in meditation, I just basically fall asleep or just get it's like it never relaxes. So when it even starts to, it's like hard to find that middle point.
Teni morang teni ari shashokumere teni tashdang teni namtok hajung chakpo mombu ge yogi yo samlo mombu dangi yo teni kom gap ni teni thambo sma teni chokpe gaps teni lamsan teni nitrongre
아니도 그래.
re yumsen teni tres na namgyun teni samlo mombu dangi yo namtok takta teni ge yo teni lamsan teni kom gap gaps teni ti kale sma jakti chokthop ke mare lamsan teni nitro we chowa ge yo
아. 년전년 그 말이다. 많이 비탑 가서 올라갈래요.
So we can't fall asleep, but we are going to come upon some tips to help us when we find ourselves in this state.
아니 뭐만 좋으리다. 저는 남쪽 마음에 빠진 돌아 아니 좋은데 삼고 말이야.
Do you find yourself really falling asleep or sort of in a state where there are no thoughts whatsoever, a very drowsy state? ngoma teni droga mare ina yung te hajong teni chisa teni sim hajong teni tumosre
sim hajong tupo. 야. 들리 잠바요. 다요나 니 소나 쳤어.
Maybe there's another person who would like to
망본데 저서 야. 아. 야.
I have the experience of the clarity through the gaze of the visual field and a kind of awareness. But when I try to shift it to this empty space in my heart, it feels like it's more conceptual and trying to create a conceptual context for it. So I find that instruction hard to do.
Teni morang ke sim teni nika teni tongbadan rabuza mikko tu morang ti jongs teni mukkamure shidang teni sim teni muksa teni nesa teni chisa ti muksa ke nesa dan tentang teni mesa za mena o ti ina teni komyapo yongere teni ti nika teni dela teni muk teni tongbadan rabuza mikko tu samsam jongs teni kamure.
야. 다치.
One more.
그치.
Is the focus on the heart with this type of meditation? I'm a little sleepy. Is it a focus on?
yeah.
Is it a focus on the heart with respect to cultivating bodhicitta versus the heart itself?
Tenga so deni da sim deni ninka dena yobi deni mikko bi gyumsen chire deni changsup sim deni gepe chetere deni gyumsen shembare tang chizki gyumsen re.
짐서 잠밤 샹좀 그심 짐서 말이다. 오나 누가서 오니 갈리셔요.
So visualizing our minds at this in our hearts is not for the purposes of generating bodhicitta, but we will continue to address this as the teaching goes on.
야, 되니 가서 다 저거 듯이 타마디스 타마.
One last person.
I could feel it was as if I could feel you kind of leading us there, and I felt awake and my heart started beating, and then I felt as if there was kind of a defense mechanism in me where there was a piece of me that was holding back, like a fear reaction.
Yeah, tambo deni gom gapi gapse deni chik deni chamala deni gom deni triji yumarang deni cho as yo deni cho bje ina deni shiten deni morang deni samla deni sewaz deni cho as yo re ina yong yang te tanyam du di chikchak cho jungs deni gebre
직접. 직접시가요.
And where did the sense of fear come from? Or why did you feel fear? Da peche dendra bosu deni chese gomam nyong yang ma deni cho ma nyung bi gyum zeng ge deni tikcha ke cho wa ge.
야. 야, 당아서 름밥신디 드니 마르시아케 연드니 계란솔라 드니 라마 드니 름보치 공나 드니 첫 금첫 잠근 연데 갈래 드니 계속럽다 겸문두지 당아서 름기 양말 로인.
So we're going to proceed with this in a very step-by-step gradual way. So you've all received instructions on meditating from Kamchu Rinpoche, and we're just going to proceed in a very gradual way.
드니 시르당 아서 드니 냥가나라 드니 셈도 드니 묵 드니 고그제티 인나 드 냥가나라 무지 냥티 양아서 잔둠시니 주 냥티 간디지 양 티나라 간디 묵 드니 요 남톡다 오키니 양티라 파치레소나 양테 젠트그만두지.
So even though we do in this meditation visualize our mind as being in our heart space, it's not necessary for us to discursively ask ourselves or inquire as to whether or not this is how we are visualizing our minds, or whether we're able to do it, or whether our mind is here or there. In fact, examining things discursively in this way is an obstacle to our practice.
대시당 냥나라 묵고 손에 드니 송바리 마토 바 조응 마드드 마레. 냥나라 묵고 손에 송바제 드니 송요 제다 이나 조응 마드드 마레.
So although we visualize our mind in our hearts, this isn't the main aspect of the practice.
조데 남쪽 담지보 특도라 드니 슬립니 드니 특도니 늑도나 딘드거레.
The main thing is bringing all of our thought activity back to 0 point, this point of no thought, and to simply rest in this state. So this is the main part, or the main point of the practice.
드닌데 백힘 살보여리 결항소 갑갑스드니 베는 뭐망보 허잡드니 총바다 총디라다 드니그나나 뭐망보 허잡니 사마 컴컴 드니 망보시 드니 소소 랑거양 허잡니 남톡 드니 망보 습고 비갑스 드니 로버트 드니 답장나 야 할리바사로 큰 드니즈 요레지 갑갑스.
Sometimes it's very strange. We can be in a situation where there's a lot of bustle and turbulence, a great amount of noise and flurry, and then suddenly bringing ourselves into meditation and bringing our minds to rest, it's possible for us to very quickly bring us into this resting state of no thought.
드니 갑갑스가 손들이 뭐망보 뭐 소소랑 집보 사살한 드니 잡잡시니 드니 시나 직냠용 약보 마용 큰 드니 요리.
However, there are other times when we're in a completely quiet place, completely away from other people, and yet it's extremely difficult for us to bring our minds to rest in this state.
조대가서 긴종 고래 마토바 드니 지소치다 니다 니마시다 니 드니 그나라 지 약보즈 냠용 약보즈 톱고 말해.
The important thing is that we maintain our practice, that we continue in our practice. Just doing a couple of sessions over the space of 1 or 2 days is not really going to see us advance in our practice.
근데 카카스 초소더니 릉곰 통보더니 요나 땡로라 릉고 통란로니 더니 베나데 가시데 른작 리서 더니 싱근도와 데나더니 릉고라 통송데더니 더니 마르드니 셈거나라장 마슴바 무크 타랑볼라타니 누나 야나 무크더니 남칼라더니 타니 누나 더니 냠용 할레바약 보용 거레스 데 저니리스.
Sometimes if you were to go into the mountains, maybe some of you are mountain climbers, to find a spot in the mountains and simply sit down and gaze into the space in front of you or gaze into the sky, and it's possible that you will find it relatively easy for you to bring your minds into this resting state of clearness and lucidity, this shamatha state.
더니 남독지경 맹큰 더니 냠용 용큰 더니 저래서 남독지경 맹큰 냠용 용큰 더니 그래서.
And so this is a state of simply being an experiencer with no thoughts.
더니 측도서 족바침보 샤대침보 코속에 배슈딴 거요. 리다 있는 더 말이죠. 아주 샤기데 셈저네 점샤거리.
Of course, these terms are also used in Mahamudra and Dzogchen meditation instructions too. However, we are using them here in a shamatha context.
더니 다른 데랑 아주 탑시 잠바더니요. 가시스 고그리 뜻수 참말 올라 갈레는 바준도 로종신난 적은도.
So there are a few more points that we also need to learn, and we'll continue to address these in a step-by-step way as we continue to work through the text.
당봉아서 싸비자동고만 하고 고야 까 치슈데 강레는 셈기셈라 먹지야 때 하고 고그래 먹시고 그래.
The most important thing that we need to understand, however, is that of the mind observing the mind. This is the most important thing for this practice.
데니 셈라 먹서티 다리가 저 공라샤 반자오레데 무바 망보치고 말이 남톡 메바시잖아 무바 메바시잖아 데니 때 무바지고 그래.
And in terms of having the mind observe the mind, there isn't a great deal of complexity that is involved at all. It's simply a state of giving rise to no thoughts and resting in that state.
데니 가서 데니 셈라타니 득비네 겁나 데니 냠용는 소소라데니 요레 이나 데니 가서 카가 데니 셰고나 데니 코랑 약보 데니 셰틈 큰 것들이 망측 데니서 가서 자가 말해서.
And in this state, it is possible for us to experience it. However, in terms of expressing it in words, it's very difficult for us to find the right language that expresses this experience.
나초거더니 탈니트 참아더니 라코르코 토니 야리용 차위 지니 드니 더 삼로탄에더니 샤파 드니 딱딱레제 나초 탈니트소.
All of our words and all of our terminology comes from the state that has already ascended or emerged from the zero state.
드니 다 라코르코 토라 마라톤 송디 드니 나초 간디군이 샤고 하고요 말해서 대 측대 가서 요 말해.
Once our minds return to 0 point, however, we don't have words to describe this state.
드니 인디 드니 나초 다적 살렌다 상렌다 드니 제거리 딜레잠바요 말해.
So we usually use the words lucid and clear. Aside from these, there aren't any other ways of describing this state.
이나 저서 검겹다사로 하고 어떤 딜라 살리제도 딜라 상리제도 삼바디 하 냠융거 약보 고탑거레스.
However, it is certainly possible for you to experientially understand this state of the mind, for you to experientially understand what lucidity is and what clearness is.
아야 다테니 가리진드지나 셈라 먹나 셈도 셈는도 지피다수 무무장 제 당아서 셈데 간디즈레 삼네가서 셈그 셈라 따긴제 가서 남진이나 가서 무그 드니 즈글라 따긴 가서 나와가 잘라 냥긴 드니제 그래 다이나 가서 셈그 셈라 따긴 제니 가서 셈데 가마이나 파르티니 어디 만드제 테 메토그레 테 무제 te karu marure samni phardini khorni samlo tangken zreze ngaso semde teni ta khorang ser khorni khorang rang kandi rezini tayungdi teni khorang ga teni khagnala jo masiwa teni ga chorwazi yung kore.
So when we talk about the mind observing itself, then we are talking about the mind observing the mind. So just as our eyes usually look at images or forms, our ears usually perceive sounds, our minds are usually fixated or perceiving phenomena outside us in the external world. So our minds are usually observing things such as flowers or people, colors, this thing, that thing. So when we bring the mind instead back to observe itself in an inward movement, then it finds itself in a state that is difficult to express in language.
Teni kapsang ato jamso kalando ni tana teni jamso tola namsi haleba ya boyin bine kamna teni nam tola chama ngombore ola chama ngombore teni gungu ngomboda oko ngombola teni parsem me patawa teni ngombo injiktin teni zganala ngaso teni lebn jore ti kapsa teni ngombo te latani ndugna teni ti kapsa teni ngaso nang nyamnyong te penda tendra boz rezi tak changma teni ngaso nang nyamnyong to ngombori ze yo marta ena khorang ayiwa yensam me pa teni there ze ya teni shoklong me pa teni zla teni nyamni sunyong rezi
yewa yetsam
ya dina te fembi fenji.
So this is might be like when we go to the ocean sometimes, and it's a day when the sky is extremely blue, the ocean is extremely blue, where there's blueness above us, blueness beneath us, and if we sit just observing the ocean and the sky like this, then we have a very direct experience of this blueness without distinguishing between one and the other.
And
if we go to places of higher altitude, then this is something for us to experience easily.
And
the reason for this is probably that our discursive thoughts automatically or naturally become fewer by going higher.
It's
possible that this might have something to do with the fact that there's less oxygen in the air at high altitudes.
Haliba teni chorlo mambu yosati nala sonsona teni ngazo yang pena uk teni tsapon rawo teni yone sim topon topo rene teni rendo res.
In any case, when we go to lower altitudes where oxygen is very plenty, then the air becomes coarser and our minds become more occupied.
In any
case, we can say that the state of our minds has a very close connection with the environment around us.
Matsola goyate nyamnyong te goyo resite nyamnyong te tenin choguk sina ko yangchi oya tati maybe jimchen ji yenanda gang yenanda ndorna matsola goyang mate nyamnyong te yona tenin rukyo.
In any case, what we really need, what we are looking for, is experience. And if this is achieved by there being less oxygen in the air or however, then the most important thing is this experience.
아야, 근데 이 냠용 가서 가능이 줄거나 때도 줄 맛이 와요. 네 남동의 지경 남동의 지경 맹큰. 근데 양들이 가서 톱니 니 송한다고 근데 양 마임바. 근데 저 가서 단 근데 제즈니 사로 줄거나 때도 줄 맛이 반다고. 근데 때라 근데 살이 상게제리 땡 가서 냠용 때 어떤부터 따고.
So this state of no discursive thought, so a state where we have no thought but at the same time are not drowsy, we're not feeling as if we are going to sleep, just a state of resting in awareness of our no thought and clarity. This is what we refer to as a state of lucidity and clarity.
다텔라 캐추섬드지 캐추지나 터디에 캐추섬드지 지대 강아지나 근데 남쪽망보 매바티 소소랑 가사로 하고 그래 엉이 셈가나라 남쪽망보 깨면도 삼바티 소소 하사로 하고 덤큰 데르지 남쪽 깨근도 문득다 삼가 말다 그것도 남쪽 매바티 찍으래.
There are three characteristics of this state, and the first is a lack of discursive thought, an absence of discursive thought. And this is, or an awareness of this lack of discursive thought. It's not one where we discursively inquire as to whether thought is present or not. However, we are aware of an absence of thought.
근데 니 빠더 양심 탑니 때 지양 막공게 야나 니던 졸란 반다고 양 틴지 마임바 르파 할리파 상보임바 데니 르파 상보 할리파 데니 서로임바 데니 니다 데니 자와니 마임바 데니 베니 남토 르파 서로임바 르파 상보즈나 서로임바 디 니바데레지 캐추 니바데레지.
And the second characteristic is one of great mental lucidity. So it's a state completely different and distinct from one where we feel sleepy and drowsy. There is no trace of this whatsoever. It's a state of great lucidity.
어떤이 선바디 강레지나 가서 카 사로티니 저 마트파 어지 마로레 곰보레 지트리 드니 지레 문 통보레 마모레 드니라고 드니 삼마탑티 샷 마타파 어디 선바디레스.
And its third characteristic is that this state is inexpressible. It's not possible for us to say of it that it is this color or that color or low or high or anything. It is a state that is beyond words. And these are, or this is the essence of mind. But this is not the essence of mind according to the Dzogchen teachings. What we are describing is the essence of mind as embodied in the all-encompassing consciousness. So when you find yourself experiencing the mind in this state and rest or abide in this state, then this is Shamatha meditation, the Shamatha meditation practice of the mind observing the mind. And until we find ourselves naturally coming into this state, we need to explicitly seek it out. So resting in this state is one without a particular object that can be focused on, the mind being this or the mind being that. It's we simply rest in this state without a particular focus point or point of reference.
다 때란 거 가서 어떤 인디 곰그 척거든이 우승우마 띠띠리지 띠디 올라다노 조샤 잠바 니나라 몸보즈 송도다 이나 대소 타마 양락다 버려 소우마 싸완다 보띠띠랑지.
So in fact, the core of our meditation, our shamatha meditation practice is just this. As the text goes on, there is more discussion, there is more description, but in actual fact, the core or basic part of this practice is just this.
드니 상마가 자마자 차비 지니 영지 냠뇽고고니 딘디 톤라 탑다 마탑다 소사 삼로야 보스동 소 삼로탄지마 냠뇽고거리 냠뇽고 톤이 딘디 에토모토 타고 제트니 가츠 테랑 나토 참첫 참되는 조건이지.
So this is the conclusion of this morning's session after everyone has had lunch and we reconvene. Let's see whether we can continue to experience or this state.
To be